Okay, so let's do an audio test and make sure that everything is actually working here. So, yeah, well, once this is working, we can get straight into some avatar discussion. So, just let me know in chat if this sounds okay. Okay, let's see. Okay, sounds good. Okay, so I guess I can switch to this. Okay, so obviously, like I said in the sort of like description for the stream, we're going to do some kind of like Netflix Avatar kind of hype discussion because we're basically just like a month and a little bit away from it. Still waiting for the trailer, and we can talk about that. But also, I think Avatar Studios is an interesting topic to discuss at the start of the year, especially given that we just had the Mike and Bryan interview and it didn't exactly give us anything. So I suppose the first question probably should be, do you guys want to do the Netflix Avatar stuff first or Avatar Studios stuff first? Because I have it all opened here, ready to go. It's just, which discussion do we actually want to do first? Otherwise, I have a few other like little bits and pieces to talk about here. We might take a look at the the Avatar Studios website and do a little bit on like, hey, how could we improve this bending quiz type thing? Okay, so let's see, Netflix, mystery topics, Avatar Studios. I guess because we led with two Netflix, we'll start with Netflix. So obviously the whole idea here is that, like I said, we're starting February 22nd. I think I have the part of the trailer where it mentions this down here. Yeah, February 22nd. So we're getting close. We're within range of getting the trailer pretty much any day now. To the point where we did get this interesting Albert Kim tweet. He actually just posted this yesterday. So obviously it's a tease of cabbage stuff, obviously. But interestingly, he mentions like less than 5 weeks to go. I know people are waiting to hear and see more. And he just says some general stuff. Not really directly, obviously, like teasing stuff. So, not really sure what to make of that one. That's a bit of a weird one. So it's interesting to see like what they're doing here, because obviously Netflix One Piece, they released their full trailer, their like 3-minute trailer, 40 days before it aired. We're down to like under 35 days, of course, at this point. So the question really is going to be like, okay, I think the first question probably has to be, they're the episode titles. So in case anyone didn't know, I think we do already know the episode titles. So if you haven't seen them before, there they are. But the idea is like, when is the trailer coming? So it's one of those weird ones where like, okay, they've missed a few obvious things. Will they do, say like Jan 22nd, a month exactly? A big one that people have been bringing up is the Super Bowl poll is, that's Feb 11th, I believe. That's a possibility, but it seems very close. Like, that's too close, in a way, in my opinion, anyway. Like, 11 days beforehand. And I don't think we have the kind of historical example, necessarily, of Netflix has released big trailers for individual shows at multiple Super Bowls. They mainly just tend to do a sort of, like, general platform kind of quick thing, and maybe once in a while focus on something else. So it would be a little bit of a surprise to me if it was like they left it this late and they did it here. I wouldn't be surprised if we saw something at the Super Bowl, like a TV spot, some new footage of some sort, just because it's so close to one of their big kind of launches. And I do think how popular Netflix One Piece was caught them a little bit by surprise. I think they know, based on One Piece now and just in general with Avatar, to, you know, hype it up, that they are going to make it work. I do agree in chat with theirs, like, please don't make me have to watch the Super Bowl. Like, I like sport. I don't have a huge dislike for American football. My main thing is just I don't like American sports the way they're broadcast, with just how many ads there are and how many breaks there are. I think the sport itself is actually kind of interesting, but especially like with also how late it probably is going to be for me. It's kind of something I maybe don't necessarily want, just from the kind of hype fan experience. So, you know, this is obviously in just a few days. I'm assuming it will have to be soon. I'd be really shocked if, like, with 4 weeks to go, we don't know already kind of what's actually happening with the trailer. Because the other part of this is that one thing I've actually been a little bit surprised by has been they haven't really used any of the actors in, like, marketing material all that much. They couldn't for a long time, of course, because of the strikes. But now that they're back in play, I expected that, like, we'd be seeing them throwing out little bits and pieces here and there all over the place. There's been some, like, oh, they appeared at this event and stuff like that, but nothing huge. Like, they're definitely not in full flow with the marketing just yet, which is kind of interesting. They are sort of, like, holding back, and I think like the tweet here that I showed you, I think you definitely get the sense that, like, he knows people really, really want more, but, like, he didn't follow this up by saying, and here's when you will get more. It's just, we will do things. It's just like, what? So there's some weirdness here, I think. Maybe when they finally release the full trailer, just the doors will open and we'll know absolutely everything. But I do feel like we're currently in a position where I don't feel like we know that much about the show. Like, it's super cool that, like, we can go through the trailer and highlight these little details from the teaser trailer that we got. And we have all of these cool screenshots. I also have this document here where, like, there's the poster. Here's some of the more kind of high-end screenshots that they put out for the characters. And this is nice and all. It's just, this was cool a bunch of months ago. I want to see a scene from this show. I want to see how the actors embody these characters. I want to see them say some lines of dialogue. It looks good. I think everyone has pretty much said that. I don't think we're seeing too many complaints about visually how things look, especially more recent where we got to see some of the minor characters. Things are shaping up, I think, pretty well. Like a new character here, Yukari, interesting. Stuff like this. Like, we got 2 shots from what seems like the exact same scene within, like, a week or 2 of each other. Can you just show us this scene? Like, can we see a clip of, like, what happens here? See them talk, do stuff, move, a little bit of bending. That's the problem, is that we really haven't seen that much of the show, and we are right there. Like, we're within the kind of hype cycle here as we approach, like, a month leading in, and it just feels like, why are you holding back so much? That's the weirdness for me anyway, is just, I don't really kind of quite understand why they aren't doing more. But like I said, I think when the trailer finally drops, I think we'll be in a pretty good position. Like, we'll know what exactly to expect after the full trailer. I'd be really surprised if we come out of the trailer and we have worries necessarily about the show. It could turn some people around the other way, but I think people have been impressed, I think, for the most part, with pretty much everything that has been seen. But yeah, Callum brings up a good point in the chat there. The whole, I suppose I'll go back here. I think this is where I was typing. Release format. like, this is the real question here, and this is what I discussed, and I actually hadn't been thinking too much about this until I did my end of year content, doing like the 2023 year in review video, the 2024 preview video. It's like, oh yeah, like, it's a Netflix show. They're going to release it all at once. Am I okay with that? Now, I'm not sure if we know for sure, but I'm assuming they'll follow the Netflix One Piece model, which, and most of their other big shows, which is where they do this. I'm aware they, with some of their shows, do slightly different releases, but it doesn't necessarily come across to me like they're necessarily teasing the idea of it will start here. But maybe we don't know that, and this is where, like, I'm a little bit unsure of, like, I feel relatively confident in saying it's probably going to be dropping all at once, but we don't really exactly know. It hasn't really been confirmed. For me, obviously it's probably a little bit more different for me compared to maybe just someone out there who just wants to watch it, but potentially, like, trying to cover this, make videos for this, and the idea that, like, 8 hours of content drops in in a day, that makes it so difficult to actually, like, cover, because like I discussed in my video, it's just the idea of, like, everyone is going to be in that sort of, like, rush where you either have to rush to watch everything immediately, or you kind of have to just be like, okay, I'm leaving the internet for a day or two to get my watch through in, then I'll come back in. And it just makes it kind of complicated. And for me, I think the conclusion I came to when I did the video on this topic was just that I think anything except all at once would be better. And, like, I wouldn't mind it if it was just first 4 episodes 1 week, next 4 episodes. It's still a giant amount of content in my mind to drop like that, but at least it's like, okay, I'll watch the first half of the season this week, I can do stuff, we have a little bit of time to kind of digest it, and then we get the next chunk, and it's still happening pretty quickly, in that you only have to wait a week to get the entire rest of the season. 2 episodes a week, I think that can work. Even if they did what, like, I think the Marvel What If show did relatively recently, where they're airing, like, I think a new episode almost, like, every day. Just anything to just create a bit of a natural gap where you don't have to worry about, like, where I'm at going through it compared to someone else. That's why, like, the weekly release, while I know for some people it might not be enough in a week, that you're just desperately waiting all this time for those episodes to drop, it does allow a lot of time to digest every episode. And again, if you want that full fandom experience, which I'm assuming a lot of the people who follow my channel do want that fandom experience, where, like, you are participating into the discussions, like, you want to see what people have to say, you want to watch, like, reaction videos, reviews and stuff like that, it's a little bit of a better format because it's easier to digest that stuff, because otherwise it's like, what? Like, I guess most people trying to make videos in this are going to be like, they're going to have like potentially like 8 reaction videos, 8 review videos and more, and just trying to do that all at once. I'm excited for it, but it's also like, it is a daunting prospect to try and cover this. And the idea that, like, okay, yeah, I guess I'm probably going to have to record my reaction to the episodes just as something maybe extra, but then, like, I also have to record the discussion videos, and it's just like this massive kind of thing. And it just turns what should be just a general exciting thing of, like, new content kind of into, this is almost too much stuff at once. It's kind of stressful. But yeah, if it's bad, it will be over quick. I guess that's one way of looking at it, certainly. But I suppose, can we really say, just based on what we know so far, that it's going to be good? It's certainly shaping up well, but I don't know if we could be super confident in, like, for sure there's no way they can mess it up from here, because we haven't seen exactly how those changes are going to work in the episodes. So for instance, like we have Suki's mother here, Yukari. New character, seems like effectively a replacement for the actual character Oyaji. How's that going to play out? Like, what exactly is going on here in terms of like this extra bit of Suki's story? Will it be required? Will it be good? You know, that's the sort of kind of questions that we're going to be having here. And then, given that like we've heard like rumors about stuff about like how potentially they're going to incorporate Avatar Karuk into things, and this idea of like Karuk's like legendary dagger that is one of the only objects that can kill spirits, is like, ooh, I'm not sure about that one. That's a little bit like, is that going to be a good kind of like switch up? But for instance, stuff that they're probably going to have to do is stuff like, say, June. Does anyone in the chat think they're going to straight up just do Bottom of the Water Tribe like exactly as it is in the show? That's my thing with this, is that like there has to be an acceptance of like there will be changes, but that doesn't give them the pass to just do whatever they want and just make changes when they really don't need to make changes. But I get it with compressing like in a way 20 individual episodes into 8. Stuff is going to have to change, and I think it is probably the likes of, say, like Jet and June especially, where we will probably see them used in different ways. And I think it makes sense. June is a bounty hunter. You can incorporate Zuko finding the group in a different scene other than the Bottom of the Water Tribe sequence, by using June. Jet doesn't necessarily have to have that one-off episode where just the team encounters him in the forest. They can incorporate that with some of the other stuff. So that's the whole kind of situation there. The Air Nomad genocide is actually it's an interesting one, because obviously we have scenes directly from the start of the trailer kind of highlighting this. Also, I don't have it up right now, but I covered it in a video. Of course, an actress that played an Air Nun posted on like a Chinese social media site showing her like in costume, and it's basically like it has to be from probably an Air Nomad genocide scene. Probably it could be from one of Aang's backstories, like we're not sure, but either way, the prospect of kind of the full magnitude of this being made very clear and not so much like being talked about in the background is an interesting one. So that's an interesting kind of idea, especially because like they did do like the only quote we have, the only line of dialogue from Netflix Avatar we have is Gyatso from the teaser trailer, which opens, of course, with the Air Nomad genocide stuff, the Sozin's Comet happening for like the first time as Sozin's Comet. That's pretty interesting to see how it goes. But that's where kind of I'm still at on it. I'm still like, I'm excited, but I'm probably not as excited as I think a lot of other fans are, just in the sense of like it is an adaptation, and that doesn't interest me as much as a lot of other Avatar stuff. Like, I would still absolutely say I'm 10 times more excited for the Roku novel than I am for Netflix Avatar. I'm more excited for the Mako comic than Netflix Avatar, that sort of stuff, which I know a lot of people probably won't agree with because they like the idea of this big project, but I'm still kind of like, it's the story I've seen before. Sure, it'll be told in a live action way, but I like Avatar in animation. It being live action doesn't inherently do anything that makes me go, ooh, that's like incredibly exciting, because I like that Avatar is animated and I want more Avatar animation. Which we're getting, of course, which is why I do feel it's very pressure off, this Netflix show. Is just that I'm probably I'm more excited for the excitement for Avatar that the show is going to bring than I think I'm excited for the content itself. But I think that's a good position to be in, because I think I'm a pretty fair reviewer when it comes to just reviewing stuff in general. So like, I'm fully expecting when I actually like watch the show that I'm going to at least enjoy it. And I'd be shocked if I feel after watching some of it that I have to go on video and be like, this was bad. I would be very shocked if that is the way I feel coming out of this show. But the excitement isn't quite there, just in terms of pure content, just because it's an adaptation. That's the thing here. I'm fully aware. Probably the biggest takeaway for this is just that this is going to make Avatar incredibly popular once again. That this is going to set the stage for Avatar Studios like perfectly. Even if it only does like okay, even if it's not like received super, super well, it's still going to get people talking about Avatar. And because Avatar and Korra are still on Netflix, as far as I'm aware, I guess depends on region, I guess, but people can go straight from this show to watching ATLA again, watching Korra again, and then it's really just on Avatar Studios to be like, hey, people are hyped about Avatar again. Why don't we actually properly let people know that there's new Avatar stuff coming in terms of animated content? Yeah, that is the real hype thing. That basically, yeah, like Callum says in chat, that like this time next year, like Netflix Avatar season 2 plus Avatar Studios actually feeling real. Like, that's what we're hoping for, is that like we know what Avatar Studios is about. Avatar's been popular based on the first season of Netflix. We're just hoping to get to a time where like next year Avatar in a way becomes a mega franchise. Like, it becomes something absolutely huge. That's the big thing here. And yeah, like new fans coming in, like it'll bring people back for sure, but also it will create new fans. I read One Piece, but I'm relatively, I would say, disconnected from the fandom. I have no clue like about the fandom kind of reaction to One Piece necessarily. So I've no idea if like the manga has already seen like a surge of popularity because of Netflix One Piece. I assume it has, but like One Piece already does like super well anime and manga, and this, I guess, just sort of takes it to the next level. So that's the kind of thing here, because I think important thing to remember is that 2020 saw a major revival, and that was just because they put Avatar and Korra on Netflix. Like, just the shows that had been out for years at that time, they just put it on the streaming platform, and it was huge. And I can tell it was huge because the numbers on my channel for about 6 months from when it dropped to 6 months later were like more than double basically what they were any other time. And it's only been kind of down since then. And that's what we're still waiting to see, the surge. I've seen glimmers of it because I know like news videos where there is Netflix Avatar news do better for me. It's really kind of clear to see. But I think people have been, I'd say over the last like couple of weeks, been kind of like, what are you doing? Like, where's the next bit? Like, it's close. Show us more. Like, it is getting weird where like I think they have to act soon. Like, I think if we get to like the end of next week and we don't know anything, like I think that's a bit of a weird situation. So like the 21st is Sunday. Yeah, I think if we get to say like January 28th and we still don't have a trailer, I'm a little bit like, what are we doing here? We're like under 4 weeks, and we still don't have anything. That's the big thing. And then yeah, Avatar Studios, I hope they actually deliver and say something. I don't think they'll say anything like really early on, but like a week or two after, like I kind of would be a bit shocked if there wasn't something, whether that be Paramount just like officially acknowledging that like Avatar is like an upcoming movie. It's not far away now really anymore. That's probably like the big thing that will get us kind of going again. Let's see, first teaser for the movie. That's an interesting idea, like that. So yeah, like February next year, they'll do the teaser for the movie. Do we know if Paramount has an investors event this year? I don't know off the top of my head. I know I checked this when I made the 2024 preview video, and the reason I have it very general of just like Paramount events, if they happen, is because they didn't do any of this stuff in the way we typically expect it, like last year. So I don't know if they're going to go back to normal this year with it. So I'm no clue if they have an investors event. The significance of that for anyone kind of unaware, why we're talking about a Paramount investors event. This, of course, was where Avatar Studios was actually announced. February 2021, that was when Avatar Studios was actually revealed for the first time to us. So it's a sort of like, well, they talk about this stuff at these things. So there's that. There's Paramount up front whenever they do that. I think they changed what time of the year they did it at last year, but I don't really know what the situation is. Paramount stuff just is going to come out. It's kind of weird what way that works, but there's that. So I suppose before we move into Avatar Studios properly, like, is there anything else that like you guys want me to talk about in terms of Netflix Avatar? Like anything specific, other than just like we're getting hyped for kind of what's coming, because that's very much where I'm at. Like I think none of the stuff that we've seen necessarily gives me anything more to, I think, speculate on beyond what I've already done videos on, speculating about how I feel the kind of plot will work, how they'll mesh things together and so on. It does kind of feel like it's like we can't say anything more until we see more. But it's interesting. I definitely just want a better sense for what this show is going to be like, mainly on that kind of minute-to-minute basis. How confident am I on the kids? I'm assuming by that the meaning is how confident am I on the kind of younger actors basically playing the main cast. My thoughts on actors in general, and a lot of the times like I rarely cover just stuff that is just pure kind of actor information of just like this character said this on social media. It's just that I'm not super into like following actors, and I'm very much just show me how you are in the role. And so I'm unfamiliar with most of the cast outside, I think, of the actors who I've seen in Lost. So I'm just going into this trusting that they've cast the show well and that they can perform well in those roles. And that I think they know not to make any needless changes with regards to how characters necessarily like are. And I think Avatar's just at that level where they know to respect it. I think that's been very clear from a lot of the talk that's happened here. I think they know what to do, what not to do. The only thing that could potentially mess this up is if they try to over-dramatize everything, because that was what kind of Albert Kim said in one of the interviews, was sort of the idea that turning it into this format, they basically can't do the same format that ATLA has, where they can just, in a way, cold open an episode and the gang is just somewhere in the Earth Kingdom. For this live action show, they have to have like a real continuity between the episodes, and they can't just be like, and now we catch up with them and they've moved on here. Like, I just hope that is purely like a structure thing, and that doesn't result in an insane amount of kind of drama-esque kind of stuff going on, in the sense that, like, I think we all find it interesting that, like, say, like, the Air Nomad genocide is mentioned here, but, like, are we talking about this in the sense of, like, is the show going to be, like, a lot darker than the kind of general tone of the animation? That might be also something that we maybe need to talk about, in terms of, like, they know to include humor and not make the mistake of the Last Airbender movie, but how much humor are we getting for certain characters? Like, say, Boomy. Are you going to do that very accurately? Can you do that accurately? There's questions I have like that. So there's that. So yeah, we have more of the characters here. In terms of, like, humorous characters, like Zhao, like, I'm actually really interested to see how this particular actor does at Zhao, because the Last Airbender movie Zhao was an interesting one, where it was a very different portrayal, but I didn't, like, hate it, because I think Zhao in general is an interesting character, but, like, he does sort of come across a little bit like Ozai Light. So I'm interested to see, like, if they take this in a slightly different direction or not, and stuff like that, because there's fascinating elements to Zhao with the whole, like, Wan Shitong's library aspect, and potentially them leaning into that a little bit more, kind of based on rumors, is an interesting one. What else do we have here? Jet, June, the Mechanist. Obviously there's quite a serious kind of plot here, in terms of, like, a group of people that has to kind of leave their home somewhere in the Earth Kingdom and make a home for themselves in one of the now abandoned air temples. So there's a serious aspect, but also the characters kind of, like, a bit kind of crazy all over the place, and it'll be interesting to see, like, the portrayal here in terms of, like, hitting both sides of, like, the character. And again, like, Air Nomad genocide stuff kind of coming up in relation to this, like, how's Aang going to be in or around the Northern Air Temple? And, like, you know, Teo, we know there is a Teo, but they haven't shown us Teo. So that'll, like, it'll be interesting to see how they do that whole thing. Let's see, Suki. They're also going to make a lot more out of the Kyoshi stuff, just because they have a lot more material to work with here, because they understand Kyoshi better now than the creators did at the time when they made the fourth episode of the show. Like, we have novels, all this extra material, so they know how to use it correctly here. We'll see how exactly it works. Cabbage Merchant, we know, is going to be there, but I'm assuming the role won't be, like, expanded or anything like that. So that's an interesting one. Question, you're still into Naruto Boruto, right? Yes, I actually just put out my review of the chapter that came out today earlier on. Boruto 2 Blue Vortex chapter 6. Yeah, I focus on it. There's not as many videos on the channel about Naruto and Boruto, purely because, one, the anime is on hiatus at the moment, and the manga is only monthly. That's the situation there. So, yeah. So there's that. Let's see, do you remember Samui? Yes, I believe so. But anyway, we're focused on Avatar here. Anyway. So, yeah, we're talking about, the characters and the kind of tone it's going to take. And I think it's just very difficult to tell because we haven't seen like the performance. Like, I think here, like, probably one of the only times I think we've really seen a sense of the performance is like this little 2-3 second clip from the trailer where it's like they're clearly. It's hard to place if this is like arriving at the temple or leaving the temple. But Aang is obviously sad because it's clear that his expectations for arriving back at the Southern Air Temple are not going to be met. And we see the debut of Momo, and he smiles, and you see being quite happy, and it's Katara who kind of points this out to him. That's a nice little scene. I just need to see like this dynamic just with the characters actually talking to each other. Like Sokka making a quip in the background. Like, I want to see the dynamics. That will be the really telling point overall in this. To see how they actually get that right. Momo looks kind of scary. This is obviously going to be a personal thing, I think, for a lot of people. I think the Momo looks very good. But it's an interesting one to discuss, obviously. Appa, I think, looks great. But again, I'm fascinated to see almost how they characterize Appa and stuff like that. That's going to be interesting. Let's see. Yeah, just I think a lot of praise for the Appa. Really good. So yeah, I think once they actually characterize Appa and don't just treat him as like a mode of transport, it should be good. So I hope we at least see like a little bit of the whole kind of like, do they need to do the full like Sokka gets covered in snot like full bit? But I think they can do something along those lines. I think you need to show that this is a character. It's Aang's best friend, basically. That whole idea that until they meet Momo, it's the last of the air nomads. And I hope they get that right. I think they will. Because I think we roughly know in the background of all of this that like they did basically sort of delay the show, I think, because they put extra effort in to make the CG look good. That, at least, I think was rumors about like part of why we didn't get the show as expected released last year, and why it is actually only coming out now. So that's the big stuff here. But yeah, like they're going to be the real questions of like say Aang, to get across when Katara and Sokka first meet Aang. How do you get across the idea that he is this much more adventurous spirit than either of them? Can they do the full airbending sneeze into the air? Really, it felt higher than that. Will they do the yip yip joke kind of type thing? There's where you'll see them in terms of how how they're being about the humor overall. For me, like Boomy, I think I roughly mentioned it earlier on, but like I'm super interested to see how they do Boomy, because it's a very chaotic character, a character that works 100% in animation, but I do wonder how they'll make it work in live action. Will they calm Boomy down a little bit, or just commit to it? Like, you are King Boomy, you are going to be as chaotic as the animation was, and it's as simple as that. Because I think if they go too much, I think they have to do that. Let's see. Are Mike and Bryan still credited whatever work they did before they left? If I remember correctly, part of when we got the episode titles was that it did mention the writers, and I think at the very least, I think Mike and Bryan are credited for sure, I think, on the first episode, but it might just be they are credited as like the original scripts for this show came from them. I think it's something along those lines based on what we saw. Like it's they're treated as being connected with like at least the first episode, and just in general that like they did work on the show for multiple years. And then Albert Kim, at the very least in one of the interviews, did mention that like, you know, there was an overlap. Like it wasn't just that Mike and Bryan left, Albert Kim came on board. There was a time when they did work together. So he did get to work with them, get to ask them questions, and so there's that whole idea. They helped on 1 and 6, so that would be the opening episode and Mask, so I guess Blue Spirit episode. So I don't know what that means in regards to like what was Mike and Bryan's vision for this show. Why did they leave? Was it because of issues about the portrayal here? Or was it actually just because the opportunity for Avatar Studios came up? That's, I think, always going to be a little bit in the background, like a bit of a mystery with this kind of, is like, when exactly did this all play out? Because it did play out over like quite a bit of time. But at the same time, Avatar Studios did feel like it was announced very quickly after it got confirmed, but it's so difficult to place in the timeline what exactly is happening here. So yeah, I think that's probably about all there really is to talk about with Netflix Avatar. So I think we'll switch things up and talk about Avatar Studios. And I'll actually start it with this. I think I need to switch this a little bit. Here. So I covered this in a video. This is a Toy World magazine, and it's probably one of the clearest things that actually gives you a sense that Paramount, over the top of Avatar Studios, does actually have some plans for Avatar for like this year, and there is actually a plan going forward. So we had the consumer products and experiences kind of vice president mention that for 2024, a big thing for them is obviously after success last year with Paw Patrol and TMNT, 2024 for them is going to be big because it will be 2 long-awaited reinventions, Avatar and also Dora. So that's kind of interesting. Like there's that sense of like TMNT has done exceptionally well for them, and now they're viewing Avatar as being almost like this will be in the same vein as that. It's a small quote, but I think a very promising quote, and a quote that I don't think has been covered a lot by a lot of people who cover news for Avatar, just because it is like merchandise related primarily. But when you think about the merchandise, very little of it gets promoted in any big way. None of it is on like the main kind of toy shelves. Like maybe you could say McFarlane's stuff was kind of close to that. But the idea here realistically is that when they talk about like merchandise for Avatar in this sense, it means like a full commitment to like a toy line that will be big for Paramount. Whereas it's like, do you really think the Diamond Select figures or stuff like that did like amazing financially stuff for Paramount last year? Maybe, but there's a big difference between that and a full Paramount marketing push behind like a new toy line, which Avatar has never timed right, never full on got right, but hopefully they'll get it right here. The question though is like, what does this mean? This would suggest that we for sure are going to see some sort of a more public facing Avatar stuff. They're trying to take advantage of the popularity of Avatar, and we'll see some stuff towards the end of the year. What exactly it is, it's very difficult to tell, but a mass market toy line I think is going to be big if that's the way they're kind of planning it, because they're, as far as I'm aware, they're not really going to have much of any Netflix Avatar merchandise. So people wanting Avatar merchandise are going to have to go and look for stuff related to the original, and they probably do need to have a proper toy line out there. That's the big situation there. Now, what exactly they do here, how this relates directly to new Avatar Studios stuff, I'm not sure. But the big thing would be that Avatar having an established toy line as new stuff comes out, where they can just put the new stuff into that toy line, is actually interesting. But that does bring us into some of the more recent Avatar Studios news. So the website. This was relatively big news, except for the fact that it's like, ooh, Avatar Studios official website. Wait, what's Avatar Studios? Where on the website does it explain what Avatar Studios is? And it's like home, okay, YouTube channel, podcast, stream the show on Paramount Plus, Avatar in concert, cool. There's a bending quiz, explore, what's down here, Korra, okay, book 1 soundtrack, novel mentions, pretty nice. The game that no one cared about, Legends role-playing game, cool. No mention of the comics, no About Us page, no mention of a movie coming out, no mention of like the future of Avatar, no comics. It's a weird release, and especially because it now for sure is officially live. They've officially mentioned this. It's in their links and stuff like that. It's not like this is just a site that we happened to find and it's not officially launched. They put up a video with Janet Varney doing the bending quiz. It's right there. They've done it. That's it. Does the Yang movie even have a release year? October 2025. Now, I suppose I'll do it right here. If we do inspect, if we do search in the code for 2025. Sorry, actually I have to do Control F, don't I? 2025. And then I search here. In all of this. Where exactly is it? Somewhere here, just kind of scanning through this, hoping to see it, is the mention of 2025, and it basically has the release date here. I don't know if they've changed it or not, but it's just here, actually. You can see it here. 2025, 10/11. It's, I think, the day after the official October 10th date, but it is notable that it's there in the code for the website. But it's not public anywhere on the website, so I don't really know what to make of that and the fact that like they've done it that way. But anyway, it's a weird website because it's something that Avatar has needed for years upon years upon years, like pretty much since like a year or two after Korra ended, and like they basically stopped doing like Avatar stuff on like the official Nickelodeon website. We have needed this an official Avatar website for the core of like 10-ish years, and they mention a lot of stuff, and some of it's quite nice. You know, they mention of the concert, they mention the podcast, of course. They do mention the novels. Admittedly, I don't think it's in the most useful way, because they mention this here, and this is a link to literally buy this particular book in Barnes & Noble. It doesn't mention like that this is the 4th book in an Avatar novel series. There's no, what are the Avatar novels? There's no, what are the comics? There's no mention of the comics. It's not, I think, what a potential mega franchise of the future needs. And it's just weird, because the only thing in any way that gives you a sense that like Avatar has big plans for the future is this email sign-up thing. But when you sign up to it, you're not subscribing to a just direct Avatar newsletter. You're subscribing to a Paramount newsletter that has Avatar ticked off, basically. And I don't think, I've checked my emails a lot. We've not got an Avatar update email yet. But it's here now. It's launched. So surely within the next month or two, this has to be the case. So I don't really know what to make of that. Okay, yeah. So have they mentioned this publicly? Yes, they have. So if you go to the official Instagram, you can see here. If we go here, this is the link tree, official link tree. It's right here. Official Avatar Studios website. They did just add this pretty much within the last week or two. There was about a week or two where we had the website and they hadn't mentioned it, but it's now up there officially. And they had like an Instagram story where Janet Varney did the bending quiz, so it's official. Like it's launched. The website is for sure launched, definitely, because I don't think they would have made the video otherwise. It's a bit weird, but that Instagram link tree highlights that like the link on the Instagram it has 90% of the website, because the website is just a bunch of links. There's no pages as such really on the website, apart from some of the stuff we'll get into with the bending app. It's just the idea of like, I do find it crazy that there isn't any mention that like Avatar Studios is working on new Avatar animated things. The first one is a movie scheduled for roughly October 2025. It feels very simple, but it's like, why isn't it here? And all that sort of stuff. It's just a weird situation. And then we probably have to discuss the interview, because I got my video out quite early because I listened to it on the podcast feed. So my review or discussion on the podcast went live like hours before the YouTube live stream went live. A lot of people watched it, and then I got a bunch of people like responding to me on Twitter being like, oh, I watched your video, and I know you said that like the Mike and Bryan response to some of this stuff was a little bit like low energy, but wow, was it low energy? Like there was a real sense of like people being very shocked at just how like, oh wow, where's the enthusiasm for the future of Avatar? That sort of idea with their response to the interview. So I do want to play. I'll play just this quick bit at the start where Mike and Bryan answer the obvious question. Their first official interview. The first time them being public about anything really for Avatar in like over a year, basically. So they have to do this once, basically. Answer the really obvious question of like, hey, what's going on with the new stuff? And this is what they say. Let me turn my audio on here.
Folks
Here we go.
in the Fire Nation.
Guys, we always appreciate you taking time out. We know that you are so busy. Obviously, you're very busy working on
some stuff,
Some things.
some Avatar related things. Yeah.
Which everyone's excited about. The whole fan base is excited about and just exploding. And of course, we all are. You know, we can't wait.
I know. All we can really say, like, I know everyone's like, hey, where's the stuff? What's going on? Like, everyone's working really hard. It takes a really long time to make animation. Thank you for your patience. I promise it will all pay off someday when I don't really know when that will be, but things are happening.
We appreciate any answer at all. Bryan is just sitting in silence, knowing that sometimes other people will fill the silence if you don't say anything.
I mean,
it's
just
a very clever tactic.
Just for context, like we started the original series, Avatar: The Last Airbender, in spring of 2002, and it didn't premiere until like spring of 2005. So, but no one knew who we were or what we were working on. I think we did one little like test pilot panel at Comic-Con. So, yeah, animation takes years of our lives and years off of our lives to make, and now we're trying to make a bunch of stuff all at once, so it's compounding that. But yep, everybody's hard at work, and we're working with a bunch of awesome people.
I think if I could state
Okay, and then it's just the start of the podcast. They go through their main topics after this point. The problem here is that, like, what they said is, like, weird in the sense of, like, Bryan brings up, like, oh yeah, like, we started work in 2002, we only released it 2005, and I'm like, you announced Avatar Studios in 2021. It's 2024. Like, it's been 3 years. Like, what's your point? I understand from his point of view, he's probably like, well, the start point for, like, the first project officially probably isn't, like, until, like, 2022 when they're fully staffed up. And so the 3-year gap that he kind of refers to is probably, like, 2022 to 2025, basically. But still, like, lot of a severe lack of enthusiasm. Like, Janet Varney, host of the official Avatar podcast, debut episode of your long-awaited season 3. You start off with a hype Mike and Bryan episode, and naturally the question's going to come up. What are you guys working on? What's the deal with Avatar Studios? And Mike is like, we're working on Avatar stuff. And then he just mumbles a little bit and says, I don't know when it will be, like, I don't know when it will come out. And there's just a weird disconnect there of, like, October 2025. Hello? Aang, like, older Aang movie. Like, this is public information. The fact that they don't even mention stuff that's already out there officially, that's my kind of problem with this. Is that I don't blame anyone for maybe listening to that and thinking, yikes, like, are we delayed? Like, we got like, obviously the whole website issue that we thought the movie might have been delayed, but it actually maybe isn't. But listening to that, I'm kind of like, is there a delay? Like, it doesn't feel like it's coming anytime soon. Now, admittedly, we basically know that this was recorded late October, maybe November last year. So this was recorded a couple of months ago. And as mentioned in chat, it was recorded a couple of weeks after we heard about the Avatar Studios layoffs. That probably explains why there's a little bit of a tone of, like, this is really tough. And that being the main emphasis, because they've probably just had to deal with a bit of a crazy situation of, like, losing a lot of people right in the middle of production. So, like, that obviously doesn't help. But it's also, like, you are publicly going on a podcast that a lot of people are going to see. Can you be a little bit more positive about the future of Avatar? Like, can you say something? Can you tease a little bit? And we didn't get anything. The only, I think, major positive I would take from that is Bryan once again saying we're working on a bunch of stuff at once. So they seem to be still, as of, like, the last few months of last year, committing to the idea that at least 2 projects are being worked on at the same time, and we realistically know it's more. So the movie, the 2025 movie, I think that's for sure locked in. I don't think anything's going to change about that. That will be the first thing. But the second project, we don't know anything about. Based on official information, you would actually say it probably is the second movie. But I think the speculation probably has to actually more be that the first series is also in production as well. The issue there is that outside of rumors, we have no information directly about the first series. We all know about the whole Earth Avatar after Korra rumor that came out, but that's not confirmed. That is not confirmed information. We don't know what's happening. So we're still waiting to see what the deal is there. It's just a bit of a awkward situation overall. And I think the main thing is just that is pretty much nearly word for word the answer they give every time they go on the Braving Elements podcast. There was nothing unique about that for 2023, 2024. That sounds exactly like what they said before. And it's just like, when are we going to do this? When are they actually going to reveal information about this? Because, like we discussed in the first kind of part of the podcast, of course, Netflix Avatar is going to make Avatar a major topic massive topic. They have to take advantage of this. Like Paramount themselves, like just from a pure business point of view, would Paramount not be silly to just let the Avatar Netflix hype die down without them being like, we have new Avatar stuff. Remember us, that sort of thing. When was the Roku novel announced? Let me just check that. The benefit of doing news videos about basically everything Avatar. So yeah, it was just before New York Comic Con. Yeah, so it's early October, wasn't it? Yeah, Chronicles of the Avatar Book 5. October 12th is what I have on my video. So that would have been announced like probably 2-3 weeks before they recorded this podcast. So yeah, that's this weird thing. Otherwise, like, I don't on the main podcast episode, I didn't really think there was that much super interesting. I thought the section about the Fire Nation inspirations was kind of interesting. Where like they talked about like the Fire Nation being based on like Iceland and stuff like that, at least from a geological kind of point of view. That's kind of cool. Otherwise, like I do feel like a lot of the, like I went over this before, like we knew what the topics were going to be ahead of time. There was just a lot of like, that sounds really interesting if they got a chance to talk about it, and very little of it amounted to anything. And then especially when we got the reveal that, oh, they're just splitting off parts of this interview and potentially podcast going forward to make the bonus content that's going to be behind the kind of Apple Premium podcast paywall. What was on that mini 13-minute episode sounded a lot more interesting, because it seemed like they discussed like 2-3 topics over the course of 13 minutes and actually discussed them in detail, versus this one where like we're like spending a minute on like, tell us about Piandao, and they're like, yeah, Piandao is based on Sifu Kisu. He's a teacher. Expanding on Piandao, like that's it. Okay, yeah, great. And then the big one, of course, origin of the Firebending Masters.
Can you tell us a little bit about their origin story and the real life design and inspiration?
I don't remember anything. I'm like, where did? I mean, I feel
like it's funny, but it's also like, guys, come on. Like I get it. I get it. They're busy working on other stuff. They're brought on this podcast, and there's an expectation that, you know, they at least try a little bit. They didn't, obviously, I'm guessing, they didn't give them the questions ahead of time. This was just a on the fly, let's see what happens here. If we can't answer it, we can't answer it. And that was it. And that's like, okay, fair enough. I don't expect them to have instantaneous encyclopedic knowledge of the franchise. I think it's normal in most fandoms that most hardcore fans are more familiar with the material than the creators. I think it's just a pretty normal thing that fans understand continuity more than the creators do. They have people at Avatar Studios to help them with continuity, and I think a lot of the writers probably are a little bit more fully attuned to this stuff, and they have people to say at like meetings like, hey, that doesn't work because of this. So I don't view that as just being, oh no, Mike and Bryan know nothing about Avatar. They just don't have everything in their heads at all times. Especially, like they say, this was an episode that was written by one of the other writers. They were involved with it, of course. It's just that, like, it'd be better addressed as a question to John or Bryan rather than those two. Like that stuff I think is all perfectly fine. It's just I think it's fair to say, from a fan perspective, I expected a bit more from what's likely to be the main appearance of Mike and Bryan on the podcast. That I maybe expect to hear from Mike and Bryan about Avatar maybe once or twice more this year. If even that. And this was our first appearance, and we kind of didn't really get anything. That's the issue there. Like, I understand it. Like, Mike and Bryan are never going to be the creators that will do like fan interviews, answer really in-depth fan questions, and basically canonize a bunch of new stuff with their answers. They very rarely do that. But, of course, if you saw my video from yesterday, of course, we have the, you know, Chief Fields. Like, this was the takeaway. And it was behind the paywall, but it was the most interesting answer they gave across, as far as I can tell, across the main podcast and the bonus podcast. What a Chief Field is, and the little example they gave, was the most interesting part about it. Because they got technical on a question for the first time, like, ever. Like, already, I think most of the time when they mention chi, full stop in Avatar, it's like, whoa, let me prepare myself for this. And then the idea of, like, fields of chi in the context of how bending works against other benders is like, that's interesting stuff. They never talk about this, which is why, like, I feel like some of the videos I have on my channel, like, are some of the only, like, resources for fans to actually understand stuff about, like, hey, how does bending work and stuff like that. So I always like, even though we don't get to do it too much, I like getting the opportunity to go a little bit more in depth on that. As for the whole, like, premium stuff, like why did they put this behind the paywall? I really feel they literally just cut a 13-minute chunk off the podcast. They didn't think specifically about what answers would be more interesting or not, because I don't think they quite understand that. And I think they just missed the mark here. That's the idea here, is just that it's unfortunate. I think the Mike and Bryan one is probably likely going to be one of the only times with the premium content where I think we'll be really super scrambling to be like, hey, what was said on the premium podcast? Because, for instance, like, they're going to have, say, like, some of the voice actors like Jack DeSena, Michaela Murphy on the podcast. Are we really going to be super freaking out about the fact that we didn't get those final 2-3 questions with, like, Jack DeSena for the kind of millionth time he gets asked some questions? Not sure about that. But yeah, Mike and Bryan, I think it was just a little bit of a, like, come on. Bit of a weird one there. So there's that. Where are we at here? So about an hour and a half into the stream. I think that's pretty much everything there is to talk about this. There was a few other interesting, I think, topics that came up. Like, I think the other topic on the bonus podcast was like, hey, kind of the whole if Katara had healed Zuko's scar kind of concept came up. And I think they basically said that it would have healed the underlying kind of pain and injury of the scar, but the scar would remain. The healing water does not remove the scar, but the pain associated with it would have been removed, which is a bit of an interesting one. They, I think, roughly said that, like, early on, it was maybe part of the plan, but it didn't obviously end up in the final kind of thing. And that's fine. The rest of the discussion about stuff like, say, bloodbending, obviously we got the Chief Fields quote in relation to that, but also the whole idea of, like, actually, they went deeper into one of the questions on the podcast, the whole Hama theory. They ended up actually going more in depth on, I think, the underlying background about that in answering a thing on the bonus podcast than they did on the actual podcast. Which effectively amounts to, like, the whole Hama Katara theory, Southern Raiders source. So the idea of this, of course, if you're unaware, is the question is, Yon-Ra, when he arrives at the Southern Water Tribe, basically goes up to Kaya and is like, we have a source. We know for sure there is a waterbender in your tribe. And the question is like, how do they know? How do they know? And the Hama theory has always been that, well, Hama escaped. They know there's a waterbender out there that came from the south. Is that it? It's a bit of a long time period style thing. Is it something along the lines of that? I think they pretty soundly kind of dismissed the Hama theory, but never really answered this. I'll bring up what I feel is actually potentially one of the more interesting bits of information in relation to this that I only recently came across. Let's see here. Okay, go back. Where is it? Here we go. Yeah, this. Lost lore, Hakoda. He's a loving father. The bond is strong. Where is it here? Yeah. Hakoda recognized Katara's waterbending abilities when she was young and encouraged her to develop them. He even traveled around the South Pole looking for a waterbender to train his daughter, but could not find one. So there is potentially how this got out. How other people found out about this. Hakoda looking for a teacher. There you go. I think straight away, this is, I think, a pretty nice answer to that, theoretically. That we know there are other southern waterbenders out there. They're just hiding, basically. Because the south is bigger than just the tiny village that we see. That's the kind of interesting reveal. So I wouldn't be surprised if this is just something that happened to get passed around. Like, people asking questions, do you know of any waterbending master around? Someone goes out sailing, goes to like the mainland, Earth Kingdom or whatever, says something, it comes across the ears of someone in the Fire Nation. It's an interesting one. Now, obviously, like, this is like from the old Nickelodeon website. It is a lowish kind of canonicity level thing, but it's not contradicted anywhere, so we have to use it. That's just sort of my thoughts on it. And I would highly recommend, like, if you just look up stuff on this. This is a Tumblr page. I'll actually just link it in the chat here. Let me just get this properly. Okay. Here, and then here is the chat. So yeah, there's a bunch of interesting stuff there. Now, some of it straight away is non-canon. It's sort of contradicted. Like, if you look at the Ursa section there, you'll see there is a contradiction. I'll actually just show that off, just to show that, like, obviously you have to line things up with it. What is the correct source of information? Stuff like that. Okay, yeah. This. Yeah, so if we look at the Ursa information here, you can see that, like, it says, wife of Fire Lord Ozai, she was born to Fire Nation royalty and was raised as such. She was the perfect match for Ozai and soon became his wife. That whole idea, like, it's like, the search obviously has the correct thing. So it's obviously stuff that it's lowish level, it's kind of retconnable material, but there's a lot of interesting stuff there that's quite interesting. And is a surprisingly detailed source of information, especially when we don't have information elsewhere. But it's also fascinating because all of the stuff that's archived on that Tumblr account is what was effectively on the old Nickelodeon website. Versus our new website where we have nothing. Do I expect us to ever have an encyclopedia on this website? No. But that is the unfortunate situation. Especially helpful since Mike and Bryan most likely forgot. Yeah, there's an interesting point on the main podcast where they do mention that, like, oh yeah, like Mike says, like, I recently became aware again that we made Escape from the Spirit World. I hope it was just kind of odd phrasing, but it's like, really? You forgot, like, one of the only other sort of, like, animated pieces of content you've ever put out for the show? And that's beyond the two shows. I get it, like, because it seemed like the hosts didn't even know, which was a bit of an interesting one. And obviously, I'm coming at that from the perspective of, like, Escape from the Spirit World is, like, main content to me. That is not, like, forgettable material in my mind. So that was just, like, an odd one in terms of, like, oh yeah, Mike and Bryan, they really do rely on the people working with them to remember a lot of this stuff. Which, again, is fine. Yeah. FCE, of course, used Escape from the Spirit World very, very much because prior to the novels, it was one of the only sources for information on past avatars. I suppose that, yes, speaking of that, probably the other part of the podcast that was kind of interesting was, I have it here in my interview notes. Yeah, the question and why Avatar novels get brought up later on the podcast is Janet Varney asked a question about this page of the art book of, like, hey, is there a name? Like, she basically tried to get us new information here on the podcast. Like, is there a name for Sozin's father here and Sozin's grandfather? And you could tell Mike in his head was kind of like, oh, I've worked on the novels. I know there are new Fire Lord names, but I'm like, you could tell the eras were going through in his head. And then I'm guessing they have also come up with names for, like, new books and new material. So he's just kind of like, what is publicly out there and what am I not meant to say? That was a bit of a fun one where he's just like, yeah, there's some in the novels, moving on. But for sure, I'd be stunned if we don't get the name of Sozin's father in the novel. I think we're definitely going to get the name of this guy in the novel. It's the sort of material and information that the novels just tend to have along the way, that if you're going to explore politics of an era, you have to cover the leaders. And it's Prince Sozin in the era of the novel, so the Fire Lord is going to be this guy here, which is kind of interesting. But yeah, just as an information, of course, here's the other Fire Lords from the novels that we do actually know about. While on the podcast they were joking about, like, what Fire Lord Bob and all this sort of stuff, and Blaze or something like that. That's what's going on there. Let's see, is it the channel anniversary or your birthday? It is my birthday. It's not the anniversary of the channel, it's my actual birthday. Just in case that was at all confusing. Which I suppose I actually probably didn't mention that. Thank you to everyone in the chat for saying happy birthday at various points during the stream. Do I have anything to show off that I got? I got this Pokeball puzzle. It's like a 3D puzzle, which is kind of cool. Might make this, maybe this will be the exclusive video this month, maybe next month, building this. It's kind of cool. Some Pokemon cards I ordered arrived. Kind of rarer cards, full art, stuff like that. that's cool. Have more on the way as well. But yeah, my birthday. That's why I'm doing the stream here. So that's that. Fortunately, no Avatar stuff for my birthday, but it's like, hey, that's what we're doing here. What's your favorite Pokemon? I'm thinking about, like, okay, I don't think there's too much of the stream left. I'm kind of like, I'll just put it out there, I suppose. Like, I think I have one more thing that I have planned to do in terms of Avatar stuff, but I would potentially like to do this on stream. This is basically just a website, PK diagram. You basically choose your favorite Pokemon for each type. I might do this if people are at all interested, but we'll see how that goes when we get to the end of this overall. Because I've been in a bit of a Pokemon mood. I was playing the Scarlet and Violet DLC, Indigo Disc, and Teal Mask. So, Pokemon mood. So yeah, we can do that at the end after the Avatar stuff. So I would say the last thing probably I want to cover is going back to the website. Is this. The bending quiz. So, let's go here. So, I don't particularly like this. I've been very, very harsh on this on my channel. And the reason for this is it's so simple. In my mind, Greg said this, I think, the best on the podcast when we discussed it. And that is that it is so simple. It is very difficult to turn your brain off to figuring out, like, what each answer means in terms of your final score. Also, a lot of the questions are a little bit, like, irrelevant. Like, why does your favorite avatar really have an impact on what bending element you'll have, what nation you'll be from? Because they're basically mashing the two together. The problem here is, of course, it is entirely reasonable that you are a firebender person through and through, but Roku just happens to not be your favorite avatar. Korra might be an avatar who represents who you are a little bit better, maybe even Kyoshi. You prefer Aang, just Roku isn't your thing. These are factors, which would be fine if the quiz was long enough to where one answer in a different direction didn't, like, have a huge impact. But this question is like a fifth of your overall score. So if I choose, like, Aang, then, like, okay, ideal meal. I think this is a fine question to have. But again, not as one, like, fifth of the overall score. So if I just say that. So far I've chosen air and the earth answer. And I know that because it's just very simple. Pick an animal to be your companion. This is one where, like, okay, this is fine. You know, they've got the bending animal for the three elements that have a bending animal, and then polar bear dog to fill in because they didn't just want to put the moon there or Twee and La there. So this is cool and all. So it's just like, okay, I know I have 1 point in air. I know I have 1 point in earth. So what way am I going to go? I'll go Badger Mole. I'll just pick it there. So I'm +1 on earth. And then this is, I think, just 2 on the nose. This is basically, what bending element do you want? It's not like which are you in a way. This is just like, which do you want? You know what these mean. Come on. This is air bending. This is earth bending. And this is, fire bending, and so on. That's the whole idea here of just like, okay, air bending. Now it's like 2-2. Then they finally, in my mind, ask a good question. I like this question here because there's 4 possible things you can get at the end of this quiz. And I like that there is a question that only has 2 answers. Opening and passionately about your emotions, or calmly and introspectively. Now, clearly, it's just a case of, like, each answer gives you +1 for 2 different elements. So if I do this, you'll see I'm going to get air or earth. So I got air this time. Because if you get a tie in your score, it just goes one way or the other. It's just that whole idea. That's just the thing. I like this. They at least give you a little bit of a kind of thing of like, hey, cool. That's a nice little description. I actually like this feature where you get the kind of shareable thing. and like you can just like save this, and they give it to you in like 2 different sizes. This is nice. The fact that like your name is included on it and makes you an airbender. It's a little basic, but I think this bit at the end is kind of cool. The problem though is that on the official website, I think it's fair to say we want a more detailed bending quiz. Because that one wasn't much of a quiz. Like, what about like any other aspect of what it is to be a person other than like what food you eat, basically what fighting style you want in general, your favorite animal and your favorite avatar? Like, is that it? There's a lot of other ways to do this that I think are better. As an example, a lot of you guys might not be familiar with this, but one of my favorite book series is Stormlight Archive by Brandon Sanderson. He has, on his official website, a quiz to decide what order of Knights Radiant from those books you go into. And this is an example of a very detailed quiz that I would love to see Avatar do something similar to this. Where, like, there's a lot of questions. Look, if I just scroll through this, like, you can see, there's actually a lot of questions here before you get your answer. And it's on a slider, so you can choose, like, any percentage to go one way or the other. And obviously, like, as you go through it, like, this is what happens. And then at the end, I did it before, I got Truth Watcher. And this gives you an actual properly detailed thing, where I believe at the time when he released this, it gave properly new information on the orders of Knights Radiant that like the books hadn't really even covered yet. And you'll note like it's multiple paragraphs about them. And then it mentions that there's even more of like, hey, here's the others in case you didn't get them. Like to just go into it a little bit more. So stuff like Dustbringer we know nothing about still. But this is a really good example of that in terms of like, none of the questions are about in-world Stormlight Archive. It's all about you as a person. So you'll know that you go through this. Like none of these questions as such are like imagine yourself as like an imaginary thing. It's a partial personality kind of quiz type thing. And what's even cooler about this is that it doesn't just give you one result that like, hey, you're this. It gives you like the percentage scores of it as well. So I got 75% Truth Watcher, but I was pretty close on some of the other ones as well. And it also tells you like, say, like, I'm not at all a Dustbringer or really a Lightweaver, but I'm relatively close to like Elscaller and stuff like that. And I've seen other people have much more like spiky scores where they're like 90% one thing and they're like 2% like one of the other ones. And then I believe it's also I think on this quiz it's very difficult to get Bondsmith because of part of the lore, of course, of this universe is that there's so few Bondsmiths that you have to be a notable person in a way to get it. So if this is your main one, it's actually like a pretty notable thing. But you know, this is an example of probably like maybe a little bit too detailed. But you want something in between. More than 5 questions. Maybe you don't need 50 questions and 100% sliders on everything, but you know, something in between. That's the basic idea there of like, I'd love to come out of this kind of knowing like, okay, I'm a earth or airbender, but which one am I the least like? Like, is it fire or air or water for me? And in a way, like, yeah, like which am I like nowhere near and stuff like that. That's the kind of difference here. I think it's just that idea of like, yeah, this is overly simple, and the other one is actually, I think, pretty nice in terms of overall how it works. So that's that. So that's that. I forget. Does the Dragon Prince have one of these? I'm not really sure. I know like Harry Potter has the Sorting House quiz. I've done it before. I checked it just before this. You have to have an account. I forget if I actually made an account or whatever. But I think that's pretty decent if I remember correctly. And it's somewhere in between the levels of the two that I showed off here. And something along those lines I think would be nice to have for the bending or what nation you're from quiz. So there is that. So yeah, I think that's probably going to bring to an end the I guess the Avatar probably section of the stream here. I'll just add here just at the end of this kind of segment and just say that I will do a stream whenever the Netflix trailer comes out, because like obviously we discussed this like right at the start of like potential options for the trailer. My plan is, like I did with the teaser trailer, to as soon as I can jump on a live stream, discuss the trailer with everyone. It obviously depends when it is, because if it is the Super Bowl, that means probably like 2-3 a.m. my time. Probably won't be able to go on a live stream like really early, so it might be the day afterwards, you know, that sort of thing. But if it is similar to how the first trailer went, yeah, I'll do it at something along the lines of the time like this stream was at. Otherwise, I guess this is the stream for this month. If they wait until February for it, I guess that will be the February stream. But that's really all there is to kind of say there. Okay, so actually it seems like, yes, the Dragon Prince does actually have one of these quizzes. So which primal source are you? Let's see. Traveling mage offers you teach you forbidden dark magic spell. What do you do? Accept her offer. You refuse. It depends. Let's just go through this real quick. There's 20 questions, so this actually seems pretty nice actually here. What steed would you ride? So here's the animal question, but just with a little bit more detail. So fox, sea serpent, white stag, unicorn. Let's just go with this. Where'd you hide a powerful magic relic to prevent it from falling into the wrong hands? Hold on to it. Change location every couple of weeks. At the bottom of a lake. Inside an old book in a library basement. Buried in an abandoned cemetery. Let's just go with that. How do you celebrate your birthday? Let's see. I'll just go with this. You get an assignment. How will we finish it? Yeah, do a little bit each day. What do you value most? Meaning, intelligence, courage, loyalty, strength. Oh god, like this is a tough one. Do I value intelligence? I don't know. Meaning, courage, loyalty. Close friend has revealed they'll be keeping a terrible secret from you. What do you do? Let's see. There's probably like a combination of multiple of these. Try to understand, I guess. Greatest fear. What do you do? You purchased a jelly tart. Demand that they hand it over. What do you do? Why are these the answers? Like, why is there not just a sort of like, you keep it and walk away? Okay. Give up. You'll come back later with your friends. I'll just go with that. If you could learn one spell, what would you learn? Raise the dead. Invisible, see the future, flight, fire, heal any wound, I guess. What armor would I wear? I'll just go this. What's a jewel in your crown? Let's see. Amethyst, ruby, many jewels, no jewels, diamonds, sapphire, emerald. Let's just go with this. Choose one. Your friend, yourself, your oath, your legacy, your freedom, your family, your strength. Family, I guess. Fire or ice? Ice. Climb or dive? Climb. Shadow or light? Light. Old or new? New? Think, feel, think. Sword, pen. A bit of a weird question, but okay. Cat, dog, cat. Primal source is the moon. Okay. Like, that one I think is good. Maybe some of the questions are a little bit like, I don't appreciate that situation, but, you know, it gets the kind of idea across in the end. So, like, something like that, I think, for Avatar would be a little bit better. But it just shows kind of, in a way, the effort difference put into each of them. But anyway. So, yeah, we'll end, like I said before, with the Pokemon quiz type thing. So, yeah, if you want to join with this one, I'll put this in the chat as well, actually, just if you're interested. This is what I'm doing for this one. I believe when you go to the page the first time, you probably will have to change the language here in the corner. But otherwise, the idea here is that you basically choose your favorite Pokemon of each type, which I think is a bit of a different one than just doing your top Pokemon. But let's go through this. So normal type Pokemon. So let's see. It has all of them as well. Like, you go through it here, and it's a massive list here. I won't go super in depth because, like, some of them I know straight away. Like, boom, that's my favorite Pokemon of this type. So for normal, my favorite Pokemon is 100% Porygon 2. Definitely one of my favorite Pokemon. Porygon 2. I prefer it over Porygon Z or Z, just because I think I like the design of this better, and I like it as a more kind of bulky kind of Pokemon than an offensive Pokemon when it's Z, especially because you can give that item that boosts its defenses. Fire type is an interesting one because, like, I like Charizard. The Mega Charizard forms are kind of interesting. Hisui and Arcanine I actually really like. We'll take a look through the other ones. Because I definitely prefer the Hisuian version of Arcanine to the normal version. Typhlosion is cool. The Hisuian version of Typhlosion is kind of cool. I'm not super into legendary Pokemon, so I tend to not really put them, like, super high up on my list. Just as a general thing, in terms of, like, I often don't really use them in the games and stuff like that. Blaziken's a cool starter. Anything else here? Infernape, yeah, a lot of the fire starters are kind of cool. Heatran, Victini. Victini's a cool kind of mythical Pokemon. Emboar, Darmanitan. Chandelure, I actually kind of like. Ghostfire type Pokemon, kind of cool. That's probably something with me, is that I know a lot of people don't like Pokemon that are basically just things. But I actually kind of like a lot of them, those type of ones, as you'll see as we go through here. Delphox. Talonflame I actually like as one of the bird Pokemon. Fire, flying. Pyroar is interesting. Turtonator. Cinderace from the Sword and Shield era is nice. But no, I think I'll stick to Hisui and Arcanine. I really think it's a nice, different version compared to normal Arcanine. But yeah, Hisui and Arcanine. Water type. This is where it gets a little bit, I think, complicated. But I love Blastoise. Big Blastoise fan. I like the Mega form, but I'll just go with the normal form for now. There are other water Pokemon that I do really like. Like, I like Cloyster, but I think I mainly like Cloyster in terms of its, like, abilities rather than necessarily the design. Starmie, a big fan of Starmie. But I can put that in over here in Psychic because it's Water Psychic. So we'll stick with Blastoise. Gyarados is kind of cool. I like Lantern. Lantern's a good Pokemon. That might be an option for the electric type. I like Azumarill. So yeah, a decent amount of water Pokemon I do like. Swampert's pretty good. Some of these ones not so much, you know, Clamperl, Huntail, Gorbis, yeah, love Disc. Some legendaries here. Empoleon's very cool. Palkia. Hisui and Samurott from the new games is still very cool. Caracosta is a fossil Pokemon, it's pretty good. Alomomola somehow is not related to Love Disc as far as I'm aware. Greninja always pretty cool. Anything else here? Inteleon. No, I think I'll stick with that. I'll stick with Blastoise as my water. Grass. I'm not super into grass Pokemon. Venusaur is cool. Like a lot of the final stage grass starters I do like, but a lot of the other ones I don't. I like Hisui and Voltorb. Arceus, Legends Arceus, I thought was a great game, and I love a lot of the ancient Pokemon. So the ancient Pokeball, like he's made of wood because he's part grass type, is actually like really cool. What else do we have here? Yeah, a lot of these ones like Hoppip, Skiploom, Jumpluff, Sunkern, Sunflora, don't really care. They do very little for me, just like random grass Pokemon. Yeah, like Cacnea, Cacturn, Tropius, often forget it exists. Torterra I do really like. Probably one of my favorite grass starters, so I think that's probably my favorite so far on this list. What else do we got here? I like Shaman as a kind of Pokemon. But let's see. Okay, some people saying goodbye in the chat. Thanks for coming. But we will continue. What else have we got here? Yeah, a lot of this stuff here. Like, Whimsicott is sort of interesting. Not super into Lilligant. Maractus, again, some of the more forgettable Pokemon here in my mind. Ferrothorn is kind of interesting. Chestnut. Decidueye. Rillaboom. The new grass starter, Meowscarada. Not super into it. Getting into some of the Paradox Pokemon, I think, further down as well. Ogerpon's kind of cool from the new DLC, but yeah, I'll stick to Torterra there. Then we go to Electric. So Pikachu's fine, but not my favorite. Absolutely not my favorite. I really like Alolan Raichu. The electric psychic version of Raichu is actually really cool. I think the design is a lot better than the normal one. I think with electric, there's a lot of Pokemon where they've done like an extra version of them that like adds electric type. That's actually quite cool. So like I do actually like, you know, a Alolan Golem is kind of cool. But I'll stick with this for now. What else do we got here? Again, I actually really like the Electrode, I think, the Hisuian version. So I'll put that here. Lantern, I do like. Magnezone, though. I like. There's a lot of steel Pokemon I like, so there's a few kind of ones that might come in here or there. What else is going on here? Magnezone. Electivire is kind of cool. I like Galvantula. Not super high, though, I'd say. What else do we have here? Palmot. Bellybolt. Interesting. That's the Pokemon I made to do the recent 7-star raid in the game, the Blaziken raid in Scarlet and Violet. I made a pretty powerful Bellybolt that did pretty well. I wouldn't say it's a favorite of mine, but its abilities worked perfectly in that fight. So yeah, I'll leave it at that for now, but we'll see what happens later on in the list. Ice type. Yeah, again, the forms are very cool. So like Ice type Sandshrew, Ice type Vulpix, Dugong Cloyster. Cloyster, like I said before, pretty cool. Glalie, not really. Arceus. It has to be this. I'm just going to pick this and leave it there. I really like this thing. This is probably one of those Pokemon that is an example of one that I think a lot of people absolutely hate as like a style of Pokemon design. But I love that this thing is just a kind of double ice cream cone. I think it's a very fun design. In Pokemon Black and Black 2, I had one of these on my team, and it was very, very fun to have. Just because you always need something to take out the Dragon-type Pokemon. And especially in that generation was before Fairy-type was introduced, so this was perfect. So I'm just going to leave that there, because nothing is beating that in terms of the Ice types. Fighting type. So this is where I will bring up my number one favorite Pokemon. So Heracross is my favorite Pokemon and has been for some time. I do like the Mega form, but I'll go with the normal form for the sake of this. Now, it is it is a fighting bug type, but if I remember correctly, there are a lot more bug type Pokemon that I really like. So I think the fighting type one is probably the best place to put Heracross, so I don't get messed up over here. So I'll just leave that there, move on. Poison type. Potentially a Venusaur inclusion here, but I think there's some other Pokemon I like. It's typically a style of Pokemon that I think maybe doesn't lead to some of the style of Pokemon that I really like, but there's a few that I think are kind of interesting. Like Gengar, you often forget like it is part poison type. Very cool Pokemon. What else? Toxicity. Shroodle, Varoom. Yeah, I'll go Reveroom. As I showed you at the start, this probably gave you the clue that I actually do really like this Pokemon. Again, another one where I think people have a bit of an issue with this design. I think it's just fun. I like that there is a car Pokemon, and I think it's cool. It's a steel poison type. It's a kind of cool type matchup with the way it works. It was used nicely in the story. I think it's a cool poison type. Ground type is a bit of a weird one because it's like it often you think it's kind of weird that there's ground and rock type in Pokemon, but that's the thing. Diglett, a Lowland Dugtrio with the hair is always a funny one because it becomes steel type because it's steel hair. I've always found that just to be a very fun thing. But anyway, Golem I like, Onyx. I don't think there's going to be a ton of ground type Pokemon that I'm super interested in. Like, there is stuff here and there. I think Steelix is one I like, because again, like I said, I like a lot of steel type Pokemon, and I don't think Steelix is going to be the winner in the steel category. So I'll put it here as the kind of ground and steel type. I've never been super into Onyx, but just something about the kind of steel evolution to Onyx is kind of cool. And if you, just in case you've never seen it before, Mega Steelix is also kind of weird looking, but it does look cool. Steelix, so there. Yeah, Tyranitar is... Wait, what? Yeah, the Tyranitar is dark rock, not ground type. That's the whole thing. Because I think the two pre-evolutions are like they're what rock ground or something like that, and then Tyranitar gains the dark typing. I think that's the way it works. So Tyranitar would be later on flying type. Interesting. Charizard. I like Charizard, but he's never been one of my absolute favorite Pokemon. That's the thing I'd say there. Mega Pidgeot is actually very cool, but let's not focus on that. Scyther's always been a cool Pokemon. Legendaries, not too much. I like Crobat, but I think I mainly like Crobat just for it's a super fast Pokemon, and the kind of poison flying typing's kind of always been cool. Not super maybe otherwise. In terms of legendaries, Lugia is one of my favorites, but I don't really like choosing legendaries there. So we'll have a look through the rest. Salamence, Rayquaza, or Rayquaza, however you want to pronounce it. I like Staraptor in terms of just the plain kind of bird Pokemon. I think Staraptor looks very cool. What else? Yeah, more legendaries. I do really like Talonflame because I like cool dual type Pokemon, and the fire kind of bird, the fire 3-stage bird's always been very cool. So it's one of those ones where like I don't really like choosing legendary Pokemon, so I'll go with Talonflame instead of Lugia, but I do really like Lugia overall. Psychic type. Okay. Now, is there any other psychic type that I really like? So I'll do a Alolan Raichu to start off with. Alakazam, okay. Galarian Ponyta, Rapidash. Oh, Starmie, completely forgot. Yeah, because I have my water type up here as Blastoise, so yeah, Starmie for sure goes up there because it's a Pokemon very, very high on my list. Always liked Starmie. Don't think we need to go any further in Psychic. Now, Bug type. There is a lot of Bug type Pokemon that I actually do like. Mega Beedrill, I actually think is a pretty cool looking Pokemon. I think it's a nice kind of upgraded form. What else do we have here? Fortress, I like because again the Steel typing also I think on that one. Scizor, I think a lot of people think Scizor is a very cool Pokemon. Scizor, whatever way you want to pronounce it. So that's definitely one here. That actually might be where I go with this. Scizor. I like Shuckle. It's a weird one, but I really like Shuckle. The main reason for this is it is a purely stat thing within the game. That Shuckle has these insane defense and special defense stats. Like it's I think in terms of base stats, like 230 on both of them. And it's like most of its overall stat total, because I think it has like 10 in HP. I've always just loved it as that kind of weird gimmick Pokemon that there's not too many of them like this that just have crazy outlier stats like that, and it's just a random Pokemon. Like you have ones like say like Blissey, I think has like a super high HP, but like Shuckle has like legendary Pokemon like defensive stats has always been just a funny one for me. So I'll probably leave it at Shuckle. Is there anything else in the bug category I want to bring up? I like Galvantula. The bug electric typing is very cool. Always on my team in Generation 5. Volcarona is pretty cool. There's all the Vivillon forms. Golisopod is cool. No, I think I'll stick with it there, but it is very close between Shuckle and Caesar. Definitely. Rock type. This is where maybe I want to put Hisuian Arcanine here instead. Maybe I might choose a different fire Pokemon, but we'll see. Graveler, Onyx, Rhyhorn, Aerodactyl. Oh, I could put Shuckle here, actually. Yeah, that's probably what I'll do. Shuckle here, and then Caesar here. That probably works nicely, I think. Ghost type. I like Gengar, like I said before. Hisuian Typhlosion is cool, but I think Gengar I prefer for now. Shedinja. Spiritomb, not really. Cofagrigus. Chandelure I like, again, like I said before. I think it's a cool Pokemon. I like Golurk, actually. Golurk is very, very cool. I love the walking armor, especially because especially in the recent games, like it's a huge overworld model as well. Like you can't miss when you come across one of these things. But yeah, for me it is Aegislash. I suppose it's maybe better to show off the other form. Where's it gone? Blade form. I love the idea that it's just like a kind of haunted sword Pokemon, and it has the kind of sword and shield forms. It's just a very, very cool Pokemon with how it works. And again, I think it's what Ghost Steel as well. So you can see there's a lot of Steel type Pokemon that I do really like. But yeah, people seem to really like the Hisuian Typhlosion, which, again, if you haven't seen that stuff before from the game Pokemon Legends Arceus, it has like ancient forms basically of a bunch of Pokemon, including the Arcanine here and stuff like that. Dragon type. Surprisingly, there is not, in my opinion, like for me actually, a ton of super standout Dragon Pokemon. I just tend to gravitate towards, like, I think other types and stuff like that. So like Mega Charizard is always cool because it has the shiny colors of normal Charizard. I like Dragonite as just a standard dragon. This is probably where I have to choose a legendary, probably. Rayquaza has always been cool. I like Garchomp, but I don't like it that much. I'm going to say Dialga, whatever your pronunciation is. I would say overall, this is probably my favorite legendary Pokemon. Maybe it's just because I have very fond memories of Generation 4, like playing Pokemon Diamond, and this is the Pokemon Diamond Pokemon, but I just think that the design of this Pokemon is very, very cool. So it's the time Pokemon as well, so that's always been cool. Dark type. So, Alolan Raticate. Always funny one. It's just funny that like the weird versions of like Raticate and Meowth, they just have like these big cheeks. Alolan Muck. Dark types. Tyranitar is very cool. That might be my pick actually, but let's see. I don't really like Mega Tyranitar that much. Absol. I've never really used it that much, even though it looks cool. Darkrai. Hisuian Samurott is cool. This is the one I chose in Legends Arceus. I think it is cool. I'm not sure it's different enough compared to like normal Samurott, but it's a cool kind of color palette, I think, for it. But yeah, I think Tyranitar remains the pick here. Anything else? Greninja's cool. Maybe a little overhyped in the kind of same way as Charizard. Like, they're two of the very like pushed Pokemon in terms of like the really, really popular ones. Incineroar is cool. Some of the newer Pokemon. King Gambit is an interesting idea. I think it's maybe a little bit over-designed. What else we got here? And then we're into the other Pokemon. Yeah, I think I'll just stick with Tyranitar here. Steel type. So yeah, one of my favorite types here. But as you can see, I have how many steel types already? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Dialga's also steel type as well. Here, what's the name of the Beldum evolution? Metagross, whatever way you want to pronounce it. Yeah, he's a really cool Pokemon. That's actually a good idea. So, Fortress is obviously very cool. There's Metagross there. Very cool Pokemon. It's just such a weird design. The whole evolution line of this one is very cool. The Mega form. Bit weird looking, but cool. Metagross, Registeel, Empoleon. I already have Magnezone up here. I think I know what I'm going to pick. Ferrothorn is nice, but yeah, I've got to go for my boy Kling Klang, the gear Pokemon. Like, it represents Steel type perfectly. It's just I think it's just such a fun line. This guy's like the fact that it's Clang, and then it evolves into it's Clink, and then it evolves into Clang, and then Kling Klang. Big fan of this. And then Fairy type. I would say Azumarill. I might be again a Pokemon that's on the verge of being maybe overused. It's probably just because I think in the games, pretty much I think everyone has a Azumarill, because the first 7-star raid in Scarlet and Violet was a 7-star Charizard raid battle, and Azumarill was maybe not the perfect counter, but it was like this really obvious pick of a counter for Charizard. So I think everyone who plays raids in Scarlet and Violet has a kind of competitive Azumarill on their team. And it's just a fun Pokemon. I think it's really cool. I like Marill as well. But yeah, Azumarill. Is there anything else below that on the list that I like? Togekiss is cool. I like Togekiss as like a final form of Togepi. Sylveon as an evolution I think is quite cool. Yeah, so some of these ones are cool. Like Carbink I think is kind of cool. I like Klefki. Again, I think it's mainly because of the ability. It's got like Prankster, so like you can use like the kind of status moves before anyone. And again, I just, for some reason, like Pokemon that are just objects. What else have we got here? Xerneas is cool, the Generation 6 Pokemon, but again, I don't really want to choose too many legendaries. Milcery, all those forms here. I think Dachshund is a fun Pokemon. just because, like, especially because it has the what's it called, like, well baked body is its ability. So it's this weird thing where because it's a baked good Pokemon, it's like immune to fire. It's just a fun kind of thing. Or it gets a bonus when it gets hit by a fire move. I forget the exact details. Tinkaton from the new generation, I think it's a fan favorite Pokemon. I think it is a very cool idea of just this tiny little Pokemon that has this giant steel hammer. That's very fun. Tinkaton, Screamtail, Fluttermane, Iron Valiant, Pheasantipity. No, I think I'll stick with what I chose before. So Azumarill will be my pick. So you can see here, then this website creates your diagram for you, and then basically lets you like download it, and you can choose what you want in the background, like Pokeball themed, Pokemon themed, and it lets you download the list here to like post on social media. So there's my list. So you can see here, Porygon 2, Hisuian form of Arcanine, Blastoise, Torterra, Magnezone. This is Vanille. I always forget the names of this. It's like, this one is Vanillux. That's it, Vanillux. Heracross, Revaroom, Steelix, Talonflame, Starmie, Scizor, Shuckle, Aegislash, Dialga, Tyranitar, Klinklang down here, and also Azumarill. So there's my team here. So the breakdown here is like what? Porygon 2 is Generation 2. Arcanine is Generation 1, but the Hisuian form is technically Generation 4 because it's like ancient Generation 4, basically. So that's in a bit of a weird situation. Generation 1, Generation 4, Generation 4. This is Gen 5. 2. This is the current generation, so Gen 9 for Revaroom. 2. Talonflame is Generation 6? Is this X and Y? I actually forget with this, or I might be getting confused with my generations here a little bit. But yeah, Talonflame is like 6 or 7? I actually forget. Starmie is Generation 1. This is Generation 2. Generation 2. This is 6 or 7 as well. I definitely get X and Y and Sun and Moon, some of the Pokemon mixed up. So I might be getting some of that wrong. Generation 4, Generation 2, Generation 5, Generation 2. So I have a bit, it's a bit of a weird selection where like I think it's mostly like 2, 5, 4. Like 1, 2, 5, 4. And I don't have a lot in other regions. So like there's not a lot of 3s really. But I don't know. I think it's an interesting list. The really obvious ones probably are like Blastoise, Torterra are starters. I think Heracross is a pretty well-liked Pokemon in general. I think Starmie, Scizor are both well-liked. Aegislash I think is well-liked. Dialga is. Tyranitar, Azumarill is. So I'd say it's a mix of like half like maybe obvious, relatively obvious picks, but I do feel my other half is kind of a little bit more odd. But yeah, that I guess more or less brings the stream to a close. So it was just a fun Pokemon thing that I decided to do here at the end, but we of course remain on trailer watch for Netflix Avatar. So that's what we're still waiting for. There's a lot of news for Avatar we're waiting for. Like we're still waiting for a release date for the Mako comic, The Mystery of Pencon Island. We're still waiting for a description for that book. Could be any day now, next month, who knows. But all we know is like next few days, next week or two, we'll have that trailer, we have to assume, and that will be my next stream. I'm assuming they'll do it early-ish. They'll give enough time before the 22nd that it won't be super far into February. That should be my next stream, is breaking down, going into detail on the Netflix Avatar trailer. So, otherwise, yes, that has been the end of the stream. And join me again in maybe late January, early February for the trailer analysis and anything else, and then there'll also be some other stuff along the way, I guess. Like there'll be other bits and pieces of news, like who knows, there might be some news about Avatar toys, a proper like big toy line happening, like this piece of news suggests. But yes, thanks everyone for coming out to the stream. Thanks for the happy birthday wishes. Thanks to Antoine there in the stream for the super chat, who unfortunately has just missed like the entire stream, but it'll be up immediately, basically, after I end it. So it will be available there to cover all the stuff. But yes, thanks for everyone for watching the stream. But that's been the video. Thanks for watching, and bye.